If you've watched this channel for a while, you probably noticed that recently I did a review video of a 20-watt solid-state laser. Now, I was quite impressed that they could pack that much power into a solid-state laser cutting tool, and it worked really well. But now, they have a 40-watt solid-state laser. And man, am I really interested to see what this baby can do. So let's find out. The No Frills box contains a very well-packed laser cutter. There's an interesting info sheet with detailed flow diagram and a handy quick start guide. I immediately noticed the air pump, toolkit, power supply, laser module, and some extra accessories. In fact, the mechanics are almost completely pre-assembled from the factory. Oh, you get safety glasses as well. The frame is all metal with a simple control pad and emergency stop button. Carriage had smooth movement with a belt drive driven from stepper motors. So, on the left side are the air pump, speed control, and pump power connection, with some handy instructions on usage. The right side is a bit more busy with power switch, power connector, USB-C interface, and micro SD slot. Assembly starts with plumbing up the diaphragm air pump. This is for cooling and blowing smoke away from the cutting area. Next is the power connection for the pump. Then on go the feet. Now we come to the real power behind this operation. The 40-watt laser module. I can feel it pulsating with power. You have safety glass and emitter orifice on the bottom. Top has status lights and covered ports. In the back has a nice legend for the warning lights. In the top front of the module. The module itself slides into the cradle, with thumb screws to secure in place. You have to unsecure and attach the pressurized air hose to the laser module. And plug in a data connector. There are handy cable clips on top of the rail. And some Velcro straps. I also got the honeycomb platform, which you really should use to protect the table surface. In the parts box are locking keys, some tweezer thing, tools, and a thumb drive with removable micro SD card. There's also a USB-A to USB-C adapter as well. Looking at the USB drive, there's quite a bit of stuff on it. Manual, videos, sample files, all kinds of stuff. They even made their own unboxing video. Oh, software setup, which dumb me ignored. We'll get to that later. Sample image is a cute little guy. I like that there is a recommended power settings document, even if it's not quite complete. They completely forgot about balsa wood. Anyways, time to connect up the USB cable to the PC. And power her up. Hey, she's alive and homing. And communicating with the PC. Using Lightburn, I decided to try the same configuration settings as with my other laser cutters and try a simple cutting shape. Clicking the frame button gave me the expected response. The manual controls are very basic, but I found the homing button useful. Okay, let's try our first cut with some 2mm thick balsa. Before cutting, I needed to set the focal length with the included focusing tool. It's the first time I've seen one with multiple distances. Place it on the part, loosen the laser module, and tighten back up at the correct distance. I had to take a wild guess at speed and power settings, so I went low power and fairly slow. Time for eye protection. Activate the laser, Egon. Hey, laser is lasering. That's a good sign. A nice clean cut. But I could tell I was likely cutting way too slow. So let's jack the speed up. Now 5 times faster. It did it! Warp speed, Captain. Next was some 5mm light ply, which will need more power, of course, and about half the speed. Not a problem. Next was some 8mm or over 1/4 thick inch balsa. Like a hot knife through hot butter. Yeah, you heard that right. Okay, how about over a 1/2 inch thick piece of laminated balsa? Look at all that smoke. It's on fire! But it did it! Ooh, hot. This is why you don't cut unattended. Wow, I have to say that is pretty neat. It also goes to show that you really should not leave these things unattended while you are cutting. But that's pretty neat. I was able to cut through 16 millimeters of balsa wood. Now it's balsa, of course, it's soft, but still, that is a one thick cut. Now I did overheat a little bit on the end there, but I think maybe because it was just maybe settings maybe a little bit too high, believe it or not, or too slow. And it was a kind of a thinner part, so just some scrap piece. But that is nice to know that I can do that. And even if I may never do it that thick, that is awesome. And of course, equally well for ply and basswood and that kind of stuff. You can cut some really thick stuff. And one of the great things is not only being able to cut thick stuff, is having the higher power, you can cut faster. So even the thinner stuff, you can just zip right through that like a hot knife through hot butter. So it got me thinking. So this seems really powerful. And I want to try something that I was not able to try with any of my other laser cutters. And that is metal. In this case, 0.1mm thick brass sheet, which can be useful for both RC and plastic models. I used pretty much full power and a relatively slow speed. Holy moly, it worked! Not a bad cut, if slightly serrated, but I'll take it. I then tried some 0.3mm brass sheet, but it didn't quite make it through, and since the heat caused it to warp a bunch, I didn't try a slower speed. Performance test done, it was time to assemble the optional protective enclosure. This is a soft cover that encloses the whole unit and will need to be assembled. It includes a USB-powered exhaust fan and length of exhaust tubing. First is to connect all the frame tubes. Then insert them all into the elbow joints. Frame goes together pretty quickly, though the cover didn't quite fit at first. until I really pounded or pressed in the joints more. There we go, that did the trick. I like how the clear windows acts as a laser filter. Zipper top opens very wide. Lastly was to install the exhaust fan using the 4 bolts. And there we go. I'll eventually divert the exhaust out a port in my workshop's wall. I decided to test the smoke removal function with a test cut. I ended up with a large cut so as to make a lot of smoke. Yep, it seemed to work reasonably well. Yikes. That's when I noticed my longer duration cuts would suddenly stop without warning. What the heck? Looking at the console log showed an error 25. Gonna have to look that one up. So apparently it's a memory overrun error, and in my haste I neglected to configure the laser properly in Lightburn. So in the device list, I added a new profile using the auto detect feature. It only took a couple of seconds, and I could also edit the name. Now I have multiple profiles to choose from. Okay, let's see if that worked. Frame function works, that's a good sign. Yep, that was a problem. It now finishes a large amount of cutting with no issues. I later noticed that the SD card has an importable configuration file for Lightburn software. Next time, I really need to pay attention to the setup video. Like and subscribe.
Okay, now that the cutter is operating as it should, and I've worked out any of the configuration issues, one of the reasons for having a laser cutter is to do things that normally would be either difficult or time-consuming to do by hand. And so what I always really like about having a laser cutter is to kind of come up with designs, come up with things that I would like to build or make that just would be kind of a pain in the butt, so to speak, to do with just a normal saw and knives and bear skins, that kind of stuff. So one of the things I really had an idea for came about from talking with a friend, and it involves something like this.
The idea came to me when my flying friend was discussing having to throw his small glider that lacked a tow hook. Then I thought, why not piggyback it onto a powered plane using a cradle with a servo release? Kind of like what you see here. So it's off to LibreCAD to draft up my own take on a glider cradle. Nothing fancy, but in short order I had something that looked like it would work. Next was to import the CAD file into Lightburn and set the power. After timey-wimey sciencey stuff, I had the part. I ended up tweaking the design a bit, but it all goes together like a puzzle. A servo mount cross member and base plate with etched alignment marks completes the design. Everything mounted on my twin timber carrier plane looks pretty good. Rubber bands hold the glider onto the carrier with a simple release mechanism. Yep, that should work just fine.
Well, I continue to be amazed by the advancements of these solid-state lasers. While I found the 20-watt models to be very useful, what stands this Creality 40-watt model apart is speed. You can not only cut thicker stuff and even thin metal, you can now cut parts out much faster. The enclosure is also a nice touch to vent out smoke, as longer cuts can really smoke out my workshop without it. You may have noticed that I never set the power output to 100%. Now that's a personal choice to extend the life of the laser. So yes, all those great cuts you saw was not even at 100% power.
The Creality Falcon2 is a great tool for the industrious modeler.
Hi, thanks for watching. Please take a look at the video description below for special HobbyView sales and discounts. Your purchases help support this channel. Happy modeling!